Hello. This is going to be a pretty lengthy video covering everything we need to do for modeling, from importing steps to loading the model to animations to the clothing. We're gonna cover it all. Alright, so firstly in Blender, gonna go ahead and import the model. The VROID model. I have a model I created just for these purposes. So we're going to wait for that to get imported. And this will be just step by step. If you follow this, then you will have a guideline for how to do pretty much everything you need to do. Spent a lot of time making sure there weren't any big caveats, really. Alright, so first things first, here's our model. I'm gonna go ahead and make sure it's textured by clicking the lighting shading. It looks correct to me. So, at this point, first thing we're going to have to do, go into cats. Click fix a model. Alright. Fix model is good. At this point, I would always recommend saving a Blender file in case work disappears or something. I'm gonna call it Model 5. That's just the iteration I'm on for this series of models. So, we have our model. And the first thing we're going to do is go straight into optimization. And we're gonna hit generate material list. We're going to deselect everything, and this is where you make fixes for materials colliding with each other. In particular, anything related to the eyes tends to have these longer bounding boxes, and so these materials need to get collapsed down. So this seems to be a common recurrence in any VROID model. So we're gonna go and look at the names of these and click anything related to just the face area. So face, mouth, eyes, face eye lines, all these things. So ignore the skin, the body skin, and ignore the hair. Don't touch those, and you don't have to worry about the clothes either. So once you have all those selected, you're gonna combine it into one texture atlas. Save it anywhere you want. Doesn't matter. And they will be combined. In terms of looks, you'll see the combined image got darker for vertex shading. But that's to be expected. In terms of everything else, it should look pretty normal, I would say. So at this point, we're now gonna go ahead and combine the rest of them. Except for the clothes. The reason we're not doing the clothes is because those will be grouped a little later. So you see I grouped now all the hair together, and so that's all good. You might notice it doesn't show up in solid because I don't have texture turned on, but there it is. It's pretty much... You don't really have to worry about how it looks in here because this is not the game engine, so this is just rendering it in its myriad of forms. Anyways, we are done. That is all you have to do for compatibility. It really is. We're now going to talk about animations. So for animations, you can go to your cats and start pose mode. First thing you want to do in T-pose is apply a rest pose. After that, you can apply a keyframe. Once you're in pose mode, start pose mode. Insert a keyframe and choose whole character. That just sets up a keyframe for your whole character. At this point, you should have an animation. If you want, you can change the name of the animation. At least I should be able to somewhere. It's probably down here. I can see my dope sheet here. But what I really want is the action editor where we can change the name. So the very basic one is called stand, I think. That's why I named it in the engine. I think I just called it stand. Anyways, that will be the name of this animation. So of course, to make the actual stand animation, I'm going to actually modify how it looks from here. So I can, of course, click each bone and move them how I want to. Uh-oh. You might notice the model's not moving. Why? What happened? Did I detach the model? How would I have done that? Okay. Well, here's what I'll do. I'll click the body, and then I'll shift click the armature. You can see I have both selected now. I'm gonna right click, and we will probably do this a little later too, by the way, for close. But I should have the body and the skeleton selected. Not in pose mode though, don't do this in pose mode. Okay. Go to parent. I'm gonna clear the parent first, cause I guess it might have messed up. And then I'm gonna hit armature deform with empty groups. Normally I don't have to do this, so that's really interesting. It must have been because of those errors earlier. You might have saw there were some errors earlier. Anyways, this is a good way to know how to attach something to an armature. Sorry about that. That wasn't actually supposed to happen, but we kind of know the fix already. So I'm going to bring her arms down to her side. This is going to be like the stand position for her. And I'm probably going to do the same with the other arm. I do want to kind of mirror them to the best of my ability. If I can choose the arm and not or the wrist and not everything else. And kind of modify that as we go. But that puts one of her arms on her side. Do the same for the other. Bend it at the elbow. Bend it at the wrist. Kind of like that. So I'll give her a standing pose. That's just fine. That's a nice little stand. We'll set that as the keyframe here for the stand animation. Now we'll make another one. And I'll just call this wave, right? So another one called wave. I don't know why it got stashed into an NLA track. That might be bad. I'll have to look at that later. Anyways, so for the wave, we'll insert a new keyframe here for the start, and then we'll go to about, I don't know, 30. Turn on armatures and get her arm back up. Her arm rotates out a little bit towards the camera, and she also brings it up, kind of like this. Finally, her wrist turns a little bit as well. Kind of like that. I forgot to make a keyframe for that, my bad. Did we undo? There we go. Make a keyframe there with the whole character again. So now we have at least the arm raising. Then we'll have a little abrupt swing of the elbow over as she does the actual waving motion itself. Ideally, I want to select the wrist, please. It's kind of hard. There we go. And we can crane her neck a little bit while we're doing that as well. Just for extra cuteness, add the ears into the rotation. I think I missed the main part of her ears because those don't rotate. There we go. Cool. Like that. So we'll do a little backwards motion here. Try to get that dang wrist again. There we go. Like so. So when that's played in the game engine, it can be played in reverse. Kind of like this. So we call it a reversal motion. And of course it's kind of rough, but it is what it is. It's a wave motion that gets the job done. Once I'm done, I'm going to save the Blender file and stop the pose mode. And now we have 2 poses, hopefully. And from here, we can go ahead and try to export them and make sure they work in the engine itself. So I do have the engine, but I'm just going to show you the process of exporting. We export as GLTF. Make sure the format is GLTF. Do not change anything else. Export as GLTF. It will take some time, so let it do its thing. And then if all goes well, we'll talk about how to do clothes next. We'll talk a little bit about clothes modeling and how to exchange the outfits and such through Blender. And you already saw a sample of how we had to relink the armature, and we'll be doing something very, very similar shortly. It does take a while. These models are very, very detailed and such. Okay, so that's exported. Now, I'll go ahead and import into the game engine. So this part you won't get to do. This is the part I get to do when you send me a model. But I'll show you at least once so you can kind of get an idea of what I go through when I'm testing out the models. So here, I get a little preview of the model. Can't really see too much, but we do know it's there. So we'll get to see it once it's actually imported properly. And it is done. So now we can go into our scene composer and take a quick look at it. It's just a preview, just like in Blender. There we are. You can see the textures got imported correctly. And so at this point, we can take a look. We have 2 animations, wave and stand, and I can play them. Stand is just that, and wave is the wave. So you can see they both work in this particular instance. Additionally, we have all we have 4 subdivisions of the model here. And yeah. That's going to be useful because when I'm going to stop the playing of the animation now if I can. Stop. Okay. But yeah, you can see here all the textures are divided. I didn't actually divide them well enough. You see, I kind of you noticed I combined the hair and the skin. That was probably not the best idea because you see now they're both attached together. And that's kind of what you do when you do the atlas meshing. So we have to be a little careful of that. Keep the elements split up. So I would recommend the next time I do this, keep the hair stuff and the skin stuff separate. That way we can modify them later in the game itself. Yeah, so let's check this out in the game. So I'm gonna quickly change or load up the model with the animation called stand. And then we can make it do the wave motion afterwards if we want to see that. And let me make sure I'm loading up the right file. Called it model 5. Okay. So now we can see it in the actual game engine itself. Make sure it looks proper. And indeed it does. Sorry, I kind of have it at a fixed camera, so I can't like translate the camera right now. But let's make sure the animation works as well. We called it wave, so it should load up the wave animation here. There it is. And if we want to, like I said, the engine allows us the ability to set the loop mode. In this case, we want to do it's called a cycle. So a loop would be strictly from frame 0 to the end and then starts at frame 0 again. A cycle does it backwards afterwards. So like I said, you can see I'm using the other half to make it look like it's a complete animation back and forth, just like that. Then she's waving. Very nice. Very, very nice. The final thing we talked about is the hair coloring change. Like I said, I screwed up with this model, so I'm sorry. This is a bad example. But you might have noticed earlier I was able to select the hair plus the skin, and I can go in and choose a custom material. So I prepared a pink hair custom material just to show that. Pink hair. So I love pink hair. It gets textured onto it, whatever was selected. So you can see the skin's now going to be pink too, funny enough. But yeah, it's as simple as that. So in the game itself, when you're selecting colors, we'll just have the materials be applied to the character model. Pink hair. Very good. So finally, let's talk about clothing, the extra part we were getting to earlier, right? So here we are back in here. Make sure you're viewing the this shouldn't be the basic model. Can I go back to the regular animation? Or not the T-pose? Please. Thank you. Okay. So make sure you're viewing the T-pose when you do this, but remember we talked about splitting up the clothes, right? I'm going to go into modeling. In modeling view, we have the ability to modify the faces and the lines connecting everything together. The armature is not very useful here, so I'm going to turn the armature off for this section. So our objective is to separate the clothing from the model. I mean, it kind of already is, because as you know, underneath the player model is their actual body itself. However, right now, it's still part of the model. If I were to go ahead and actually select vertices. Okay, so we're ready to continue. I figured out my issue from earlier with not being able to select something. It's because you have to select the actual model, which is all located in hair1.baked. Didn't really occur to me. So our goal is to select the clothing. If you drag right now anywhere with the selection box select enabled, you might notice like you would select, pretty much like any particular mesh really, which is not ideal because you might accidentally select other pixels. It's kind of hard to just select the clothing with one by one, right? It's kind of tedious. So there is a very easy way to select just the clothes. Start by selecting a small selection and going to select similar, and by vertex, excuse me, one moment. select linked, sorry. Select linked and choosing linked. You'll see the bottom half of the dress has been selected. This is because they're all in the same group. So now you can actually hold shift and just select a little piece of the clothing and hit Control L again. That's the shortcut. You'll see more of it has been selected. And you can keep doing this until all the clothing specifically has been selected. Now at this point, you can verify that all the clothing has been selected by right-clicking and dissolving these vertices. As soon as you dissolve it, you'll notice the naked body underneath the model, and you might notice a few extra points just lying around. Those points are normal because you are dissolving, but if there are anything extra, like I forgot this little piece right here, I noticed, you'll want to include them as well. So I'll just select that, Control L, boom, got it. I think hitting delete vertices is better. Dissolving can leave artifacts, but you can see I got everything this time. So now we're ready for the next part, which is actually extracting the clothing itself. By right-clicking and hitting separate selection, you can now turn it into its own thing. Now you might notice it's in its default pose, which is normal because we have apparently set that as our default pose. So that's fine. If we were to go into object mode, you'll see it matches right now. So now that our two bodies are separated, like the clothes and the body itself, it's time to separate this for good. Create a new collection and drag the clothing into that new collection. Now, it doesn't just work quite yet, because if you were to go into the pose mode now, oh, you know what? We linked it earlier. Okay, well, pretend we didn't link it earlier, right? If we had not linked it earlier, your next step would be to do what we did later. And I will demonstrate that now. You would click the clothing, and then you would click the armature afterward. Any part of it by holding shift and clicking the armature. So again, you would start by having the body selected, and then holding shift, not like that, and clicking any part of the armature, like this. Once you have done that, you will need to right-click it while not in pose mode. Gosh, stop being in pose mode, Sig. Okay. Oh, yeah, this part is an annoyance I'll have to explain too. Every time you try to click the armature while in object mode, you'll actually select the body, which is not what you want. So select the clothes, go up to this little sieve here, and turn on the selectable restriction toggle. Now you can turn off the body from being selected. If I try clicking the body now, I'll only click the armature. So now you can click the clothes and successfully click the armature. Right click it, and I'm going to clear parent here just to demonstrate, right? So this is what it would be right now if I didn't link it earlier. You'll see the arm moves without the clothes moving. This is where you attach the clothes to the armature. So, out of pose mode, click the clothes. Turn off the selection for body again. Close, armature, while holding shift, right click, parent, with empty groups under armature deform. And then that's it, you are done. If you enter pose mode now, your clothes now follow your character. And we can do a little trick here by double pressing R. We get the rotate mode. Woo! Rotate the chest, whole body, just to make sure it's working, right? And there we go. That's it. Your clothes will now follow your character. And this means if you ever use different clothes, you just take off the clothes from this character and put on other clothes on top. And now you can link it to this armature and animate it as well, using the same animations. You don't have to change the animations, you just have to link what clothes are tied to her. And that's it. Which is what we want. So even though they're two separate models now, they're still one animation. At this time, we'll talk about how to modify the clothing. So you can actually now turn off the body and just focus on the clothing itself. I'll turn off the armature as well, as we don't need to see that. So one of the cool things Blender offers is the ability to texture paint. If we click the texture paint tab at the top, we'll be presented with this. Now you might not see this right away, so you might have to click the body and click this object here to be brought to the texture paint view, and you might recognize this. You might have saw this earlier. And additionally, I will go to texture paint here, and you'll get this nice little window on the right side. It'll probably say this at first. So here it'll say text draw, which means it'll try to draw whatever like texture you have selected. So you can actually select a texture up here if you wanted to, I think. Nope. But I would go down to texture properties where you can specify it specifically. When you first open this up, it's going to look like this, but you can hit new and create a texture yourself. In this case, I'll use an image from my computer, but you can use a color, you can use anything you want. And I think an appropriate thing to use is probably this Glaceon 100 by 100 circle. Once you have something selected, you can actually just straight up start painting with it, as you can see here. And what's pretty cool about it is that it's actually oriented with your camera. So if I were to like face more upwards like this, it would be facing that. And you can see it gets kind of weird when it gets up there. Or if you want it facing more downward, like that. So it's kind of a neat little like feature where you can paint whatever textures you want, and you can see the possibility. You can already imagine what the possibilities for something like this could be, right? Just yeah, you can style and theme all your clothing around something like this. It's that simple. So that's pretty cool. And then you get to save it and use that. And then, of course, you can turn on the body's visibility again to have a look at what it looks like once you're back in object mode. I think it won't. Oh, wait, I have to turn on this. There we go. I mean, you can texture paint the character as well, so, but we won't worry about that. So now you know how to tie other objects together. Let's separate the shoes real quick for another quick example. So once again, you want to go into your modeling mode, and you want to make sure you have the normal body selected because the shoes are still a part of that, remember. And then we're going to want to go to the Hair 1 Baked to have access to this. We can turn off the... we'll leave on the clothing because the characters look weird when they're naked. But again, you can select and hit Control L. That should link you with the shoes. And then once again, you can separate that. So once they are separated, you should now have... just to make sure, let's delete these. Oops, hold on. Let's delete these vertices. Oh, it looks like we got part of the foot and not the bottom of the shoes. So it's a good thing we checked, because we need to make sure we don't do stuff like that. So I'm going to undo the selections real quick and be a little more specific. So I'm going to first see what that does. Okay, so this time I didn't select the foot. So again, be careful, make sure you only select like 1 or 2 vertices, and double check your work. So this time we got the feet, now we just get the soles. Nope, we gotta get the sides too, apparently. So these are not points, these are edges, so up here we can switch to the edge select mode. And by doing that, I can select some of the edges here, instead of the points. It looks like these are divided into different sections, so it requires multiple selections here. It looks like I got everything. Let's delete real quick. Oh wow, there's even a part on the bottom underneath. That'll be a little trickier to get to, but we'll try our best. Looks like I got that one. And now I got those. That is everything, and we're left with the feet. Wonderful. Very detailed feet, I will dare say. Like I said, these models are fabulous. Alright, so at this point we have the shoes. Let's right-click and separate. Boom. Shoes done. Once again, you can make another collection just for your shoes. Where is... I always lose ID data, rename. Shoes. Move that into there. And then make sure, I believe right now it should still be linked in terms of animation, but we can double check by going into pose mode real quick. And moving a piece of body. Like a leg. Yep. So right now it is still part of that frame, so we don't have to relink the parent. But now we can modify the shoes if we wanted to. So I will turn off the body and the clothing, and we can focus on making the shoes look the way we want. In addition to textures, we can also just do regular colors. So if you're more into just wanting it to be a certain color, like earlier you were talking about them being like, you were trying to make black shoes white or whatnot, and you wanted them to just be painted a different color, you can do that, and there is a fill bucket. Let me go to the shoes selection here, so I can select the make sure you select texture paint mode. Oh, you can also do vertex paint mode. That's for colors. So if you want coloring instead, head to the I believe it's just the active tool. Yep, at active tool you'll have access to colors. So I believe after you select the color, you just start painting? Nope. Maybe texture painting. Nope. I know we can get colors. Okay, that blends it. So I think you just need a raw texture. That's what it was. So go to texture properties, and instead of that, select a blend. And I'll just give you a raw coloring tool that you can work with. So at this point, I don't know why I can't... Gosh, what did I just do? Oh, I see. I made it. At this point, we can just focus on making them whatever color we want. Again, you have a fill bucket, so if you want to start with a certain color, you probably can. The brush just disappeared because it's a different tool. So you'll have to do this again with your own colors. I think I have to go to vertex paint again. No? It's kind of weird. Takes some getting used to, but you can see there's a lot of like potential here. Oh, duh, it's the paint tool, that's why. Oh, I think the color selection's up here. Duh. Okay, my bad. So, yeah, if you wanted like blue shoes, you could start with the blue base, and then from there do something with it. Now, obviously, texturing and stuff would be on your own doing. Or you can smear and smudge like the textures as well. Make them all different. Speaking of which, let's talk about the frill stuff real quick from earlier that you were talking about. Because you can kind of imagine that you can do the frill stuff using a similar technique to what I was talking about earlier in that one video, which I hope you still take a look at because it's a pretty simple concept. But yeah, it's the idea that you can... Sorry, I'm going to stop messing with the shoes now. Let's go back to the clothing. I'm just going to use the checkboxes. Those are indeed nicer. Alright, but as for the clothing, making that like little frilly thing is not too bad. You can start by texture painting a small line that lets you get something done there. Make sure you have the body selected. Vertex paint. Excuse me, we're always doing texture paint, my bad. So let's do a straight line that just cuts across. That way we have a nice little marker for drawing. I'm gonna make the strength less than 1 because I don't want it to be like super bright, you know? Just a nice color, light color here. Now you might notice, depending on like how you zoom in or out, the size of the brush is actually relative to the camera like distance, which is kind of weird to get used to at first. It doesn't look the best, but obviously you can spend a lot more time with this now that you know that this feature exists, right? Let's go back to modeling, because in modeling we can now modify this to make it look more like frills. So the first thing I would want to do is I want to select some edges, these edges in particular, and we'll go all the way around to select the other edges. Oh, I want to be holding shift too, my bad. Hold shift so you don't lose your selection. Keep going around. We can also select by face. This will actually make things a little easier because you can, although you have to be more careful now. Hold control to get rid of things you have selected. Or you can just click the triangles too, either way. But yeah, we can now take this and start modifying it. So the first thing I would do is go back to points and right click, and you can do shrink or fatten. You can see this kinda gives a bowing effect that we want. We can also do push and pull, like this. So when it comes to frills, you want that like sharp edge, right? And then you also want to bring the vertices up. So we'll actually go to the transform and we'll modify the Z and bring it up a little. We can squish it a little more. You know, not that much. More like that, yeah. I think that should be good. If we want to, we can bring it up just a tiny bit more. Yep, that looks good. So now we have the bottom to play with. So let's get the bottom of the dress. Alright, so first thing I want to do is I want to bring this up as well. And that's a little too much. Kind of want we want like a nice in-between, a nice medium here. I think that should be alright. So now for the actual like frills part, obviously the frills isn't just like a bump in the dress, but it's also the texture looking a little different. So you can do something cool. You can go into sculpting. Sculpting is a tool that lets you add to the model, make things fatter and such. So if I just like click around a little, I can just fatten up certain sides here. Yeah, just a tiny bit. Now you might notice the dress on the back actually pops out a little bit, which is kind of an interesting little feature here. So just keep that in mind when working with it. And we can fix that. That's not a big problem. There's also this cloth option here, which is kind of interesting. It can flutter out the clothing a little bit more. So it's more ruffled like cloth. So you can just rub that in a couple places. And that adjusts the smoothness a little bit here and there. There you go. You have a little bit more of a like frilled appearance now. It's not much. I made it pretty subtle, but you can go more extreme. And obviously if you texture it better, you'll be able to notice it more than what I did. But it's a little more frilled than it used to be. Again, the back can be fixed with a little bit of model adjustments. Probably want to take these points right here and just bring them together a little bit. So, or actually I might do the opposite. How do I select none? Alt A. Okay. I might bring this one up a little bit. This point seems to be the biggest problem. I wish the dragging wasn't so rough. Okay. Okay, that's pretty close. We can push like these two vertices back as well if we really want to. They would be in the negative y-axis a little bit, like that. I mean, it's not too noticeable, but yeah, joining them up again would be nice. I think we can make them equal somehow. Let me see. Oh, there we go. Yeah, the push or pull will do it. I'll bring them together. That's a nice solution, actually. They invert each other, so you can just slide them back into place. That's actually a pretty nice tool. Anyways, I really hope this all helped you and is going to make your future modeling a little bit better. I really hope you stick with it. Don't give up and keep trying. Things will only get better. And trust me, it's not easy. Don't think it's easy, because it's never easy. It's gonna take a lot of work and a lot of practice. Just as a final out, I'm going to export all of this and we'll see this model changed. But I really hope you you will watch this thoroughly and take some of this back with you, some of this knowledge back with you the next time you work on this stuff. I spent a lot of time researching this myself to try and help you because I feel that sometimes if I go looking, I know what you need to find, what you're hunting for. So it makes it easier for me to get the stuff that's actually important to you and tailor it to your needs instead of videos that sort of have what you're going for, but not really, you know? You need the stuff that actually matters to us, so that's why I'm glad I can offer this opportunity. Okay. So I will import this one more time. We'll check it out. So you can see right away the glaceons and stuff and the bright blue shoes now as part of that model. So you can see it's all the changes are being applied, and just like that we have it implemented into the game now. It's really cool. I think it is really cool. I think it's gonna ask to save changes. Yeah, save. Save it, we're done. Yeah, but here it is. There you go, Trimead. There's our changes. So, yeah, it really is that easy. I hope this helps you a lot. The jump. I forgot I implemented that.